All right, we are live. So good day and good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you to panel number 4. This is the second day of the annual summit for the Clean Energy Business Council. Panel number 4, today's panel is looking at energy efficiency in the MENA region, doing a deep dive into the market status, looking at challenges, opportunities. And I would like to mention as well that right after this panel, panel number 5, there will be a sneak preview of the annual energy efficiency report that CEBC publishes, and I kindly invite everyone to stick around for that. My name is Raed Kirat. I'm a senior advisor at the Clean Energy Business Council, and I'm delighted to be moderating today's panel. Maybe a little bit of context, just as we start. As you all know, finally, we're beginning to see some relief and exit point to this difficult COVID phase with the rollout of vaccines and things beginning to stabilize around the world. I think governments are looking to re-energize their economies and restart their engines, as they say. We saw a lot of economic relief and stimulus packages that governments are rolling out in the realm of hundreds of billions or even trillions. And as you all know, there's a lot of this relief is really directed at two main goals. One is to combat climate change and the impact of the changes in the environment, the severe changes in weather conditions and so on, and the impact on infrastructure. And at the same time, they're hoping to utilize the energy transition that is needed in this climate mitigation to be an economic transition, talking about job creation and bringing back sustainable jobs into the economy. And there's no better platform for that than to use climate mitigation as the pretext for it. Now, in the center of all this is decarbonization, as we all know. Yesterday, there was a very interesting court ruling, a landmark, I would say, actually. I read it very briefly. Court ordered Royal Dutch Shell to reduce their emissions by 45%, I think by 2030, in 9 years. And 45% in emissions in operations and the products they serve. I mean, think about that for a second. It's huge. And this is Royal Dutch Shell. I mean, this is the writing on the wall. And it's becoming reality. So decarbonization finally is the heart of all this. We saw a few weeks back, few presidents commit to slashing emissions by 50% by 2050 and so on. So it's finally things are on to us becoming a more resilient, a more sustainable society and economy. So in the heart of decarbonization, two things, renewables and energy efficiency. And obviously the topic of today's panel is energy efficiency. If you look at the MENA region, MENA region in general still depends up to 98% on oil and gas. The MENA region, from an energy intensity standpoint, if you measure that per GDP, there is a very strong coupling. Unfortunately, still we have a very strong connection between economic growth and energy use. Although some economies around the world manage to slightly decouple that. So there is economic growth, there is growth in GDP without necessarily increasing energy consumption. The GCC is still one of the highest energy use per capita. And still the GCC leads, I think, in terms of energy efficiency, the market development, ESCOs and super ESCOs, and so on. So I'm delighted today to be with a group of really experts in the field. And with that, I would like to invite our panelists to present themselves, name, organization, and things you're working on. Maybe we start with top right. John, will you present yourself, please?
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is John Rafferty, and I work for ESB, ESB International. ESB, my name, a bit of background for myself. I'm from Ireland. I've been based in Ireland for the past few years, working on various projects in Ireland and GB within our ESCO wing that operates primarily within the Irish and GB markets. ESB, just for a bit of context, ESB are the main utility on the island of Ireland. We are the owners of the transmission and distribution system north and south of the Irish border, as well as the operators of the distribution system. We are a vertically integrated utility with wings in T&D, power generation, supply, and we operate, as I say, both in Ireland and in GB. We've quite a diverse portfolio. We've seen a lot in Ireland. We've seen a lot of renewables come onto the system. Ireland has a significant portion of wind, being quite a windy and wet country. And what we've seen over the past few years is a shift from conventional generation more towards things like non-synchronous generation, inverter-based generation, and inertialess generation. And Ireland has very much been at the cold face of these new and emerging energy systems that have to deal with a lot of, a lack of stability and a lack of robustness. And ESB is a utility that has been primarily focused in addressing these concerns. What we've seen is what we've learned primarily from experiencing these situations, and we can speak more about this later, is that we have a lot of knowledge and a lot to offer internationally on how to address these issues and how to better utilize a quite closed and a quite condensed system. So the international wing of ESB, we've been working internationally and in the Middle East for the past 45 years or so. We actually operate in around about 120 countries globally, providing various consultancy services, utility-to-utility consultancies, transformative services, owner's engineer, buyer's engineer, for CCGTs, thermal and renewable. So like quite a broad portfolio. I have been recently appointed to head up our operations in Oman. I'm very much looking forward to hitting the ground running. Once I arrive there in the incoming weeks, and we see a lot of potential in Oman and the Middle East region in terms of these energy efficiency and energy services businesses. So that's it for me.
Thank you, John, and we look forward to seeing you in the Middle East. Stefan. I think Stefan is reconnecting. Okay, while Stefan connects back, Engineer Faisal Rashid, please introduce yourself. You're on mute, I think. Yes, please.
Yes, sorry about that. My name is Faisal Ali Rashid. I am Demand Side Management Senior Director at the Supreme Council of Energy. I'll speak a little bit about the Dubai Supreme Council of Energy and a little bit about my directorate within the Dubai Supreme Council of Energy. DSE is basically tasked with is the governing body, which is tasked with policy development, setting governance framework to streamline existing energy practice across DSE entities, which basically entities that are related to or linked to energy, whether it is linked to energy generation, water generation, transport, or waste. Also, we're tasked with planning and coordinating concern authority and energy bodies to deliver new sources of energy while employing a balanced approach to protect the environment. Also, DSE has set dynamic strategic direction to achieve saving in power, water consumption, as well as fuel abatement to increase the penetration of green vehicle, including hybrid and electric vehicle. And also our vision is to be always a role model in the region in terms of energy security, in terms of energy efficiency, and our mission to support Dubai economic growth through security and energy supply, diversification of energy sources, and also energy efficiency while meeting the environmental and sustainability objectives. So this is just a brief from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Faisal. And I think we'll be diving in a little bit on some of the impressive work that the Supreme Energy Council is leading. Stefan.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. So just my name is Stéphane Legentil. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Acting CEO for Abu Dhabi Energy Services that we abbreviate as ADES. ADES is a subsidiary of TAQA, which is the integrated utility in Abu Dhabi. Myself, I've been in the UAE for now 8 years, focusing entirely on energy efficiency in buildings, ESCOs, super ESCOs, and all of this. And I'm quite happy to join this panel, and I thank the organizers and the audience to be here today.
Thank you, Stefan. We look forward to your insights, being a veteran in this field. Last but not least, Rashid, you're on mute, yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rashid Hamida. I've been working as Vice President on energy and technology activities at Enova. Enova is a joint venture between Majid Al Futtaim and Veolia. Our core business, we have two core business. The first one is the facility management, how it was our first DNA. Since the establishment of the first super ESCO company in Dubai, we are acting also as one of the players when it comes to energy efficiency and so on. Our activity is spread around the region in 7 countries, and now we open the 8th one in Turkey. And on all those countries, we are providing both services, facility management, as well as energy management. And I'm also have the chance to be a board member of the CEBC, this very nice organization. Hopefully will bring a lot of value on ESCO and energy efficiency industry, generally speaking.
Thank you, Rashid. I would like to remind our audience and viewers to submit comments and questions. I think if you go on stage, there is a tab for Q&A. Please feel free to submit your questions there, and we'll try to address them towards the end of the panel. I mean, the format of the panel really is a bit informal. I mean, I have a list of questions, topics that they connect back and forth with the topic of energy efficiency. We'll kickstart it with our panelists, but I think the whole point is really to try to give more of a deeper insight and keep things informative. Stefan, let's start with you, please. I mean, you've seen the super ESCO, the ESCO market really start from its early days in Dubai with your work in Ittihad ESCO. Now you're doing similar initiative in Abu Dhabi. In terms of opportunities, and let's talk opportunities, talk about challenges. If you look at the energy efficiency in MENA, what are the opportunities in energy efficiency if you look at it from the government perspective as well as the private sector perspective? You can give us some insight on that, please.
Yeah, I think, thanks for the question. I think there is a lot of opportunities on this market. So I did not mention in details what Abu Dhabi Energy Services is, but you mentioned it. So we are the super ESCO for Abu Dhabi. So we are here to organize the retrofit market in Abu Dhabi, focusing on government buildings and semi-government buildings. But if you look at in general, the opportunities, I think there is, especially following this pandemic, a lot of people have realized that there's a lot to do. You see a lot of rise in ESG and sustainability in the corporate environment. Just as an example, recently, so our parent company TAQA announced its strategy for sustainable and profitable growth, put commitment on ESG principles and practices, etc., etc. So you see that more and more. So in the corporate world, there's a lot of opportunities at the moment. You've heard, and we've all heard about the concepts that are emerging of green recovery, global recovery, citizenships, things that are reforms that are being put in place by governments to really improve the prosperity after the pandemic. The other thing is that the ESCOs, so the energy services companies, when you look it's in the region, it's still a fairly new concept. So I think it's now existing for probably around 8 years in the region. But if you look in markets where it has been existing for much longer, like the US, there is, for example, this figure that was communicated by the National Association of ESCOs in the US, which says that all the ESCOs in the US have delivered $55 billion of savings in the US since 1990. So there is a huge opportunity also related to reducing costs and reducing, when you reduce electricity consumption, you reduce costs, you reduce emissions. So it's all positive. Now, talking a little bit about the local market in Abu Dhabi, there was a pilot that was launched by the Department of Energy a couple of years ago on, I think, 7 or 8 buildings. And this pilot has shown that there is an initial average saving of 38% across those buildings. So there is a significant opportunity for making savings. And I think in general, the UAE is quite advanced compared to the region. I think there is a mix of policies, regulations existing. There is guidelines. There is organization like super ESCOs that are being put in place. There is even at the UAE national level a roadmap, the Energy Strategy 2050, as a roadmap for reducing consumption. I think it says that it looks to increase the efficiency of individuals and corporates by 40% in terms of energy, which is quite significant. So really here, there is a lot of vision here, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for all the actors that are being put in place. There are also challenges that we can talk about maybe after.
Sure. I mean, so from private sector standpoint, I mean, this is a chance to reduce Opex, to keep it in simple terms, and at the same time achieve some of their goals in ESG, environment, social, and governance. From a government standpoint, it depends on the subsidies provided. If it's a subsidy-heavy electricity market, which is the Middle East and MENA in general, I think that's obviously relieving a burden on the governmental side. In terms of challenges, and this is not just for Stefan, but Stefan can lead the discussion with the remainder of the panelists. In terms of challenges, what do you see as the main challenges for energy efficiency in the region?
Yeah, I think, well, when we talk about challenges, it's a good thing because it's also the way, I mean, identifying the challenges is part of finding the solution. So I think I'll talk more about opportunities around that. So I think there is a fairly large thing, which is educating customers in general, because one of the issues of energy efficiency is that it's not visible. It's not something that people like to talk about. It's not very fancy. So a lot of work needs to be done to educate customers about this. There is also maybe things around creation of policies and regulations that would be strict in order to obtain results, obtain action, and this kind of things. You may, if again, it requires people to do efforts to do energy efficiency, and if there is no incentive to do it, some may not simply do it. There is the incentive of the costs. Okay, I'm going to save costs, so okay, it's good to do because I'm going to save costs, but you may need some other action points or regulations or things that will incentivize people to take action around this. And there is also sometimes the issue of financing all this, because doing energy efficiency requires finance. But that's where I think the UAE has been put in place those super ESCOs, because they are here to help finance projects as well and remove this burden of financing. But still, it can be an issue, especially in the private sector. So I think we all have a responsibility to increase awareness about energy efficiency. And if you look at the recent published work that was done by the IEA, International Energy Agency, with their net zero roadmap for 2050, which is a huge piece of work that they've been doing. Clearly, energy efficiency in buildings is clearly identified as one of the existing an existing clean technology that should be reinforced. That it's existing, it works, but it's not developed enough. And I think awareness is really important. And the fact that the IEA is putting this in their roadmap and pushing it very strongly helps us in terms of awareness. For me, that's the main thing that requires action.
Okay, all right. Okay. We talked about buildings. Why are buildings so important? When we look at energy efficiency, there are different sectors. Why buildings come up front? I think this is a point that Faisal wanted to discuss. Why buildings are so important for energy efficiency? If I do a priority list, buildings come at the top. Why is that?
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit to what Stefan has mentioned on the challenges. I think the key thing to start with is to have a strategy. I think once you have a strategy not for energy efficiency only, for the whole energy management aspect related to energy security, energy demand side management, integrated water strategy, also green transport. So the strategy will set the tone, will have the detail, will have the breakdown structure. I think once we have the strategy, once we have the enablers, once we have the activation, I think this will be a good problem to deal with. I think rather than not trying to solve or trying to push an initiative. I think once you initiate on some strong, solid ground, like I mentioned, the strategy, the governance structure, the committee that you have to structure, the advisory committee in the meantime. Then we have the measurement and verification aspect for this strategy for the project, and then also reporting and the approval process with the top decision makers. I think once you put all these things together, I think we can say it's going to be different from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, and then as you evaluate and you look at 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you can see the difference, and you can, I think, celebrate the achievement in general. With respect to building, we know the building are a heavy user of energy. I think in Dubai, even outside Dubai and the region, I think 80% of power generation goes to energy, and also 60% of greenhouse gas emission also from the power generation consumed by energy. So when we address energy efficiency within building, I think the benefit is not only for the year that we finish. I think the benefit we can see that down the year. I think 10 years from today, we can see each year we will benefiting. And if we don't address energy efficiency, we can look at 10 years ago and look at the losses for each year that we have not addressed energy efficiency. In Dubai itself, we have more than 135,000 buildings, including commercial, residential, government building, so commercial consists of shopping mall, hotels, and other buildings as well. So building can yield to the greatest saving potential, I think, of any sector of the economy.
I can understand that. I mean, most of the consumption, especially in the Gulf, air conditioning buildings, and I can see it's fairly simple to regulate standards for buildings when you have a new building. But when you take building as a building sector, I mean, I don't know, 99% is existing buildings. And how do you address the challenges of retrofit? It's one thing, it's easier to put a spec on a new building, to a green building. So this would be here too, but the retrofit sector, let's talk about the retrofit sector for building.
Again, the retrofit as a sector, I think the new building code usually address the new building, and we know that the existing building are inefficient in general, and they will not be addressed. And as we update our green building code, I think the gap will widen because new building will become more stringent,
exactly.
Getting closer to a net zero energy building, and then the existing building will be left alone. We have a big stock of the existing building. So we can address them, as we said, through different way. One is is addressing building related to government, because this is the way we let government lead by example, and this is what we have done in Dubai to issue a directive, and within this directive we have enablers, we have responsibility matrix, and we have stakeholders, and we have also contract model. And we can say that the directive which was issued in Dubai has been one of the great enabler for both for government, because we have a mandate, and also for private sectors where they can learn and hear what is happening within the government, what is the benefit. And that's why I can say that in terms of achievement, I think both we have projects from both sides, from government and also from the private, in terms of quantities. And of course, building retrofit is one of the key programs that we have within the demand side management, and continue to deliver saving in terms of kilowatt hour, megawatt hour, in terms of gallon also for water. And we continue to monitor the achievement, and we continue to also connect with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Very well, very well. Let's talk about the tools to enable, the execution of maybe difficult sectors like building retrofit and so on. Rashid, may I ask you to talk about the role of ESCOs in the energy efficiency market, and maybe you can also try to define or delineate for us. I mean, we hear the word super ESCO. What is the difference between what is a super ESCO? How does it differ from an ESCO? And should every country in the Middle East, we saw the Gulf countries, by examples, in super ESCOs. Should every country in MENA have a super ESCO? What models are there for super ESCOs? What's the value of super ESCO? Please go ahead.
Okay, so to simplify the wording, so the ESCO are aiming to provide an energy solution to its customer, including to have this position on the whole value chain, including the auditing, the design, the redesign, so sometimes the retrofit part, implementation of the solution, until the generation of energy savings. The main goal being improved efficiency. So other possible services provided include energy infrastructure, outsourcing, energy supply, financing, until risk management. It's this comprehensiveness of the services that differentiate somehow the ESCO company from a common energy company whose main business is solely to provide the energy to its customer. Going back to the super ESCO, it has the role to scaling up the energy efficiency on its region by promoting the energy efficiency concept in order to gain acceptance of all stakeholders. And I think it was one of the biggest challenge of Stefan probably in Abu Dhabi. And to establish the most suitable regulation and to provide, in some cases, a kind of financial support. So it's obvious that a big value is expected from Super ESCO. And for those reasons, and because each country has its own economic and social ecosystems, it's recommended, I guess, to establish of Super ESCO, the establishment of Super ESCO on every country. However, it's obvious that by creating more synergy between Super ESCO and they can also learn from each other based on the experience that they have.
Maybe just to put some more insight, and Stefan, please feel free to step in. I mean, super ESCOs so far, what I've seen, they're owned by the government for developing a regulatory framework. They support standardizing contracts, and they provide funding, and they really, in the sense, they don't compete with private sector, but they're enabling private sector.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So the role is really to provide projects to the ESCOs that are in that region or country. Is this the only one for Super ESCO? I mean, can Super ESCO be private, or does it have to be started by the government? Give us a little bit more insight, please, on that, and maybe talk about examples in the region of Super ESCOs.
No, I've not seen private ESCOs being privately owned, because you have a role that gives you, one of the key role of the Super ESCO is really give access to the government buildings, because it's very difficult for a private company to work with government, because government are usually have to manage with very strict procurement policies, and procuring energy efficiency is not an easy thing to do. So that's where the value of the Super ESCO is to really help all the government entities procure energy efficiency through the ESCOs. So that's really a value that the Super ESCO brings, because otherwise, as a private ESCO, it would be very difficult to go directly to a government entity. And if a government entity does not itself initiate the work, then nothing will happen. So Super ESCO is there to really help on the government side. Obviously, it will also be supported by strong regulations. I think Faisal mentioned it in Dubai. The Supreme Council of Energy is really there to put the regulation in place so that government will then move with the Super ESCO. In Abu Dhabi, it's the Department of Energy that does a similar activity. They have also a DSM and Energy Rationalization Strategy 2030. But I think that's the way the Super ESCO is being set up. So it's very difficult to organize the Super ESCO as a private entity, because then it would not have the legitimacy, to be able to work with government. And all the Super ESCOs I know, they are owned by governments, either directly or indirectly. I would say, like through the utilities, which is the case of ADES, the case of Etihad ESCO. I think in Saudi, the Super ESCO is owned by the Public Investment Fund. You have also, I think, a difference between Super ESCOs is the way they work. I think in the Middle East, most of the Super ESCOs are outsourcing to ESCOs, so they are really there to generate a market for the private ESCOs. But you have some models where the Super ESCO would do the work directly themselves. And that's, for example, the case in India with the EESL Super ESCO, where they would directly buy products, install products, and do the work by themselves, not really relying on the private sector ESCO market. I think that's the major difference that you would see in business models between Super ESCOs.
I mean, Super ESCOs in the region, they've handed pipeline, a significant pipeline, silver platter, which is all government buildings. I mean, Saudi Arabia, that's gigawatts in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And, to be honest with you, I mean, do you hear about Super ESCOs in Europe and North America? It's only the Middle East where you hear about Super ESCO. India is one example. But is it really a common model to have a Super ESCO kickstarting the market, utilizing the pipeline that they have, a golden pipeline, captive government buildings? We only hear this in the Middle East. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But this model is this model applied in Europe or in Ireland or North America? Super ESCO, or it's all just given to the private sector? Regulate the market and give it to the private sector. The banks will invest. Government role is to really provide guarantees and lead to de-risk the business model, and give it to the private sector and they execute. I'm trying to debate. Please allow me to go a little bit deeper into that. So I hear about Super ESCOs in the Middle East. That's about it.
I think in Ireland there is some work there.
Go ahead, Rashid.
Yeah, I think the model of energy performance contract was born in Europe, but the model of the Super ESCO is much more mature here in UAE. I had the chance to work 18 years in Europe, and the model is completely different. The level of commitment is completely different. But the fact that my feeling is whatever we open a super ESCO, it's a huge booster of energy efficiency. We've seen that in Dubai, we've seen that in Abu Dhabi, we've seen that in Saudi Arabia, in Morocco. A few months ago, a super ESCO was established to tackle and to support facility sectors as well as industrial one. And I think it's, as it has been said by Stefan, of course, the super ESCO is somehow the sustainability arms of governmental sectors, but they can also act to support some private sector that are not enough mature when it comes to the sustainability. Because not all the private sector are the same page, are the same level. Some of them, they already build and they establish some sustainability department, some consultancy companies supporting them, and they have sometimes some strong corporate commitment when it comes, for example, to tourism, hospitality, hotels, and so on. We know that the group, without doing advertising, but a group like Accor, they have a strong commitment in terms of sustainability. But we had facing also several private sector that they are keen to start to do something when it comes to energy efficiency, but because they don't have enough maturity, maybe they need support of CEBC.
Sure. No, I agree with the notion, and I think as long as we have clarity where the government is really there to enable the private sector, not to compete with the private sector, I think this is where that logic comes through. And there are positive and negatives of the experience in Abu Dhabi. You hear about the same thing in Saudi Arabia, and there is lessons learned. And the model, when it's moved from Dubai to Saudi to Abu Dhabi, it's not always 100%. I mean, it has to be modified slightly. John, you were going to comment about the energy. How is the energy efficiency market in Ireland? Tell us about the examples.
Yes, well, the market's not too bad, to be fair. The concept of the super ESCO now is certainly a new one to me. I've not really experienced it too much. In Ireland and GB, there's no such entity that exists. But I see quite a lot of value in it, as has been alluded to by the panel. It's an incubator for the ESCO industry, essentially, and it facilitates a lot of connections, and it adds a lot of confidence and accreditation to an industry that's really just developing in the Middle East. As I've kind of seen, we've had similar issues in Ireland in particular, where we as a utility have been a legitimizing entity that have come in with an energy services offering, and because of the established relationships we have with the people of Ireland, then that has facilitated a lot of business there, which has been fantastic. Now, I must specify that our energy service business is entirely ring-fenced from our utilities business, so a completely separate entity and completely separate from our supply business. But what I would say is that I see a lot of value in this type of relationship with a government-based super ESCO that is able to standardize and regulate an industry as a whole, is able to provide that accreditation, which really essentially gives people confidence, because if you just introduce an ESCO type business or any type of business without any kind of regulation, then you kind of run the risk of people with vested interest in various kind of technologies, or going down various routes. And the main aim I see here is to serve the policy of increased energy efficiency, and as well as serve the end customer. And if you introduce a situation where places aren't regulated, you have ESCOs that are primarily solar providers, or primarily DSM providers, or primarily building installators. And if they have a vested interest in one of those without being agnostic, then there could be an argument that the customer isn't really served and the interest of that ESCO is served. And I think a super ESCO is a good entity for regulating that business, would be my take on it.
Sure, especially when you have, markets like the Middle East that started from it didn't exist and need to be created. So that can be a very vital tool in creating that super ESCOs. Staying with ESCOs, let's talk about the business models. Rashid, you've mentioned performance-based contracts. They started in Europe and they're being applied. I hear ESCOs and clients complaining that performance-based contracts never work in MENA. defining the baseline, tracking the performance, and tying that to a payment can be a headache. Let's talk about performance-based contracts and the good and the bad, and what other models can we apply. I mean, I've dealt with the companies here in Jordan, actually, where we have very high tariffs and we don't have a super ESCO. And there is discussion that, there is a value to create a super ESCO here in Jordan to really regulate the market and develop it. Otherwise, it's a single-off project that happens every 5 years and there is no continuity. And this is, I think, one of the main values of ESCO. They create that continuity, create that, fill the gaps with the local players, the ESCOs that exist in the market, and kickstart the engine, as they say. But are we only relying on performance-based contracts? Are there any other ways where an ESCO can talk to a hotel and say, you know what, your savings is X. We both agree that I'll easily achieve half X based on the performance that you have, and you can pay me fixed payments for 5 years. Can you comment on that, please?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So of course there is the lever of the business model itself. The major one are the performance-based contract and the shared savings. What we are doing right now, so in addition of the usual role of the ESCO as one of the major sustainability partner of our client, we should be on continuous creativity to assess any way, lever to create value. One of the approach that we are promoting is to combine, we have two approaches that we are promoting. The first one is to combine facility management and energy management. Indeed, when we have an energy performance contract with a committed energy savings target, we can propose on the top of that to extend the O&M beyond the asset under the energy performance contract, to put in place additional savings and vice versa. On all our facility management contracts right now, we are including the energy management components and value proposition in order to support the client to reach their sustainability target.
Is this a must for Innova? Do you have to take a facility management contract and do an energy efficiency contract? Does it have to be the two have to be combined for you, or you can?
Yes, we always put it. We always put it. For us, we are making it as business as usual. Either if it's included on the tender or not, because we are seeing that if it's included, of course, we need to reach this expectation. If not, we are adding it as value creation to the client, and we are open to any business model that we can bring. The second model that also we are promoting is what we call P4P, pay for performance. It's a model with zero capex, based on the digital, based on the deep monitoring, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on. We can propose, for the time being, mostly for the client that we have it as FM client, because our operation is there, because we have a well-known of the operating condition of the assets, of the building, and so on. So we are proposing this offer called the P4P, where we are based on thanks to the digital and the big data analysis, we can optimize more and more the operating condition of the asset itself, and we can, for the time being, we can commit with this model between 5 and 10% of additional savings that we use to propose it on share savings, which means everything above this targeted line, it might be shared between us and the client. So it's an incentive for us to be always on the top of what we can do. And obviously, it's a net income to the client because they didn't invest any single dirhams.
I mean, I can see if when you combine the facility management, digitalization, monitoring, and you're very close to the resources and the consumption, then that I think a performance-based contract can be easier. Stefan, can you comment? I mean, is it really? Are we only? Is the performance-based contracts are the only way to go, or are there other business models that can be looked at?
No, there are many business models that can be used. In our case, one of the key elements for us is that we finance the project ourselves, so we don't have the clients to pay for the project. So in that case, we need to have we use contracts that are performance based, because when I commit some budget on the project, I want to be sure that the savings are going to be there, because I need somehow to reimburse the capital that we've been getting. So it really depends how things are being done. But if for example, if you don't finance the project yourself, then there are a lot of different models. And I think what we see more and more is exactly what Rashid mentioned, which is those with the coming of new technologies, the fact that the buildings are more and more connected, have more and more sensors. You can have software-based solutions that would optimize a lot the use of the building, and those are very cheap. So there's a way to make savings. Obviously, that's not, you will not change completely. If it's an old building with old equipment, with really inefficient, you will make savings, but you could do a lot more by reinvesting into replacing the equipment. So it also depends, I think, on the level of commitment and investment that the clients want to do. And obviously the how the buildings are. If it's a very recent building, you would not change anything. You would just add maybe the few tools and software tools to optimize it further. But it's a very old building, like chillers are end of life. You really need to do something. Then it's worth going into a deeper retrofit with that the client cannot necessarily finance, so you would need someone to finance, and then you need commitments with guarantees, etc., etc. So, yeah, there are a lot of different possibilities. But
okay,
results also are different. If you can have certain solution that will give you like 5 to 15% saving, and you have other solutions where you invest deeper and you can get up to 40-50% saving. So depends also the level of commitment, what the building owners are looking for, what they want to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about mechanisms to enable ESCOs and to enable the market. I mean, it was mentioned. I think Faisal talked about customer awareness. So often you talk to building owners, building managers, and you talk about you propose energy efficiency, and it's not really a priority to them. Without removal of tariff subsidies, obviously, I mean, their pockets are not really impacted, and it's a nice thing to have. There's always a discussion that we have to take this discussion to the board, not to the manager of the building, take it to the executives that see the bottom line and see the bigger picture. But in terms of mechanisms to enable the market, I mean, Stefan, you mentioned that for us it's easy. Others will finance the project, but to grow a market, you really have to do the snowball and the snowball effect take place, and it's always about regulation and finance. Dubai, I mean, they're going at it. There is a very detailed regulatory framework, and finance is still somewhat lacking. I mean, we don't see private banks investing in energy efficiency projects that I know of. How do you see, what mechanisms do you see in place, and how the two evolve? Should regulation come first, or should finance come first? I mean, you're doing it yourself, Stefan. The government is investing in projects, but is this this model will shift to be more of a private sector finance with a clear regulatory framework? Maybe talk a little bit, and this is for the audience, for the panelists to discuss.
My own view is that regulation is absolutely needed, because without that, people have a lot of things to do in general, and if you don't have the strict regulations, people will be a bit lazy and do the easy things first, and not necessarily energy efficiency. It's a lot more easier to put solar panels on your roof. It's a lot more sexy. It's nice. People will talk about it. So people would focus on this, but not necessarily looking at inside the basement of the building, how are the pumps working and this kind of thing. So if you don't a little bit force the people to do it, then it's going to be difficult to get interest. The price signal is another thing, obviously. And some countries over the last few years, and I think the CEBC did a very good study on the tariffs in the region, and some of the countries in the region have used the price, the electricity price, as a signal for people to move, and I think it's a very powerful tool. And I think Dubai did it also I don't remember which year, but it was a long time ago. If you suddenly raise the tariffs, then suddenly people realize that, there's a cost related to that, and then suddenly my bills are increasing. I should do something. So that's something that can be used as well. It's not necessarily easy to do and not very popular in general, but this happens, and this is very powerful in the government sector. I think Kuwait did it, where they re-multiplied the government tariff by 10 or something like this a few years ago. This is things that can help to do projects.
Okay. Rashid, you want to comment on this? On mechanisms to enable ESCOs?
Yeah, so I would say all levels are most welcome. Regulation, finance partner, and so on. Now, coming back to regulation, we can consider also Super ESCO as a regulatory entities as well. I think it's considered, it puts some trust and some confidence in the market, because it's managed mostly by the governmental entity, and it's used to be considered as a trusted third party, which is good to make the market more confident. Regarding the regulation, it might set, for example, we can expect that some regulation might set some incentive regarding sustainability commitment. And regarding the finance partners, they might get also some advantage by financing the energy performance contract, which is somehow a green action, and they can take some advantages, because when we are doing some business model and so on, we do believe that this kind of partner, they can reach easily an ERR around the 15% and even more, which is quite interesting. And also they can have this dual advantage. The first one, to have some good business model, allowing them to reach an interesting ERR, but also to highlight the fact that they are a part of some green initiative.
Very well, very well. I want to shift a little bit now, talk about what I think is an interesting point. In MENA, there is a strong coupling between economic growth and energy intensity. And there's always discussion, how can you decouple, how can you grow the GDP and without really putting more carbon or more energy into the economy? Of course, if your energy is 100% clean, then put as much energy as you want, and that's not a problem. Again, we focused, we're talking demand side, we're talking buildings, we're talking consumption. But if you look at energy efficiency, it can go across the all sectors, across the energy value chain. It covers water, it can go talk about power generation, transmission, distribution. And what are your views on other sectors? What can we do to get to what is needed, I guess, to define in terms of energy efficiency when it comes to power generation value chain? Maybe we can take Dubai as an example. Faisal, we've discussed before, and he told Murad, our focus is buildings, which is clear. Energy consumption in industrial sector, say, is a bit limited. But what else can be? Are you looking at? You're in charge of demand side management, but what other sectors, energy efficiency as it relates to the value chain of power generation, transmission, distribution, or even other sectors like water or industry? What's happening in Dubai on that?
Yeah, I think before we get into this, I just want to spend 1 minute talking about, I think, building retrofits as Dubai. I think it's leading. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. I think since Dubai is leading, I think the region in terms of number of buildings that have been retrofitted, I think it's fair to say, I think we have basically limited option, and the limited option we were able to push this initiative toward reaching good result. We started in 2016, And now we're in 2021. I think more than 10,000 buildings have already been retrofitted. I think when we say we finance ourselves, this model already exists long back, maybe 50 years ago. That's why we have the ESCO model, which basically you don't finance yourself. There is a model basically to help the owner, to help whether you're a hotel owner or a shopping mall, there is a financial model basically to help grow this market. So I just want to say that it's very important to have the ESCO model. Yes, we're not perfect in terms of MENA region, but I think dealing with such initiative for the first time, just maybe 4 years ago, and reaching such result, I think it's a positive note. And on the other question that you have asked, yes, there are other things also. In Dubai, we don't look at industries a lot because industries consume maybe 10% of our energy. It's basically building is the key. Then we have also transport. Transport, we know that electrical vehicle and hybrid are part of our acceleration. I heard before, maybe early in the morning, some of the maybe negative thing on electric and maybe hybrid. Yes, we are. I think we will not be able to shift to electric vehicle like 2020 to 2023. We could reach 100,000 EV in the market. That will not be possible. That's why we want to move gradually toward what we did in Dubai. In 2016, we had only 500 green vehicles, including hybrid and EV, and today is more than 10,000. If you move gradually, I think you will not disturb the economy, you will not disturb the infrastructure, whether it is for EV, whether it is for power generation. You don't want to have a jump, let's say, to 50% in 2 or 3 years. This will not help us or serve the economy. You want to have a gradual shift toward, I think, reaching the sustainability. And this is what we have adopted without also subsidy. And for water, also, we have the integrated water strategy, which is basically utilizing recycled water more and more and for different purposes of use. I think we're moving toward increasing the share of recycled water. As we speak today, the share of desal is more than 55%, and the share of treated water is only 27%. And we want to reach close to 50% by 2030. And there are many projects that are being executed.
These figures are Dubai, right? Not UAE, Dubai.
In Dubai, yes. And some will be executed in the future. And our target, as I said, to reach a higher share for recycled water. And also there are many pilot projects which, including energy storage, it's still not mature, including hydrogen generation, hydrogen vehicles. So whatever is not, I think, mature, did not reach the level of solar or EV, I think we should continue to do more pilot, including net zero energy building also. On the demand side management, we continue to do pilot, we continue to connect with the key stakeholder to ensure that we reach maturity and then we make it part of our strategy.
I want to build on a point that you mentioned, green mobility. UAE has been leading. Dubai, United Arab Emirates has been leading green mobility. And if you look at the reports, what's happening elsewhere, I mean, the discussion now is at least 80% of cars on the road by 2050 will be EVs, more or less, or some form of it. Really, I mean, the notion of consumer choice plays a big role in EVs. I mean, the government has a role to play. There is I hear you from a regulatory standpoint that we have to transition our way into it. But really, the push and the pull, the market dynamics, I mean, the EVs are all consumer choice. I mean, I was shocked to see how many Twitter videos and Instagram videos of Saudis presenting their electric vehicle, and they're very proud of it, you know what I mean, in Saudi Arabia, and they're showcasing the car, and they like it. And this uptake, I think, is happening. You have more options, different brand names of electric vehicle. Tesla is not only the only company out there. Governments in the region, Saudi Arabia is investing in Lucid and others. if we look at the green mobility, what's the impact? I mean, there is a huge impact on demand side management when there is an uptake of EVs. I mean, you're talking about adding, if I have a small car, I don't know, 20, 30 kilowatt hour, charge the battery if I come home empty, if it's a small car. And adding 20, 30 kilowatt hour to an average size home, aside from EV charging, there's thousands. I hear you, Faisal, that the uptake has to be linear or we have to transition into it. But honestly, this is not in full control of any government. It's a consumer choice. And if prices drop, people will demand EVs and they will complain, I need my charging station. And how is the impact on demand side management in terms of a load profile and also EV charging once that happens? I mean, what is needed to happen? Maybe tell us a Dubai perspective, are you ready for it? And do you think it's going to be 10 years or 5 years? I mean, do you even control it? Can you control it? I don't think you can. Give us some more insight on the demand side management on EVs.
Yeah, I think you brought up many points. I just want to say that as you clean your supply side in terms of cleaning the grid by increasing the share of renewable energy, I think when EV comes, I think it gets penetrated. I think it is fair to say that some of the people say that your supply is heavily dependent on fossil fuel. So I think when you continue to increase the share of renewable, I think it's fair to say that EV penetration will make sense to us. So in terms of the math, if you say, will this affect or impact, will the charging station impact the grid or impact the supply side? We can apply this in Dubai. Let's say our target is to reach by 2030, 100,000 car. So 100,000 car itself, if you take one vehicle, it will consume, let's say per 100 kilometer, 20 kilowatt hour. If it's 100,000, it is maybe 2 million kilowatt hour, equivalent to less than 0.10, I think, terawatt hour, which is basically hardly anything in terms of percentage if you say whether it would affect the supply side. That's why if we move, I think, gradually toward our strategy in terms of increasing the share of both EV and hybrid, it will not have that effect in terms of adding more power generation capacity to the supply side, especially when we have energy efficiency program, which basically make building more efficient. This will also help the situation.
Stefan, do you agree with this view?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of views on EVs because that's not really my area of expertise. But
from impact on the demand side management, generation, I agree. I mean, what Faisal said makes sense. But from the demand side, not the generation side.
Yeah, I think for us, there is an interest to link, as EVs are going to be more and more common, obviously they will be linked to the buildings because you need to charge them, connect them somewhere, so usually to the building. We've seen already ideas from clients of, as part of the retrofit project, adding charging points. So this is something, and then we'll manage the thing. But I don't think it's a lot controllable how people recharge, etc. So you will just have to take it as part of the load of the building.
All right. Rashid, I want to come back to you. You're VP of Technology at Innova. Tell us what's new in terms of technologies. You talked about AI being an enabler of ESCO, performance-based contracts and ESCOs in general. Tell us a little bit more maybe about new technologies and AI, the role of digitization in this field.
Okay, I will try to do shortly because right, you are opening a very large door, and now the digital is everywhere, every day. When you wake up in the morning using your smart watch until the night, when you sleep with this famous blue light, help you to sleep like a baby. So the digital is obviously is everywhere. We'll become to something obvious now, and soon we will talk about the digital like drinking water in the tap. So it's going to be something as usual. Going back to the topic itself, so I would say that the role of the ESCO became crucial on that matter by playing the role by handling equipment and so on. The digital solution, the IT network, cybersecurity issue, and so on. All of those components, and by committing on the top of there, it take a huge place in our business. I want to say also that the digital landscape should be built as a city. Better is it's urbanized, more efficient, sustainable, and resilient. So at Enova, what we are building, or the way where we are building our digital strategy, is based on two drivers. The first one is the business value, and the second one is I would say the business challenges. And those are materialized on several layers. The first one is data collection, because the data is the raw material when it comes to optimization, digital, and so on. And thanks to the IoT, smart meter, BMS systems, and so on, any buildings, any facilities are providing a lot of valuable data for us. The second layers is analytics. So we make the decision to move forward on what we called low coding solution. Why? Because we want to engage and to involve our analysts, energy specialists, and so on, more and more on digital. So it has to become like tools as usual by promoting what we call self-services business intelligence solution, by providing tailor-made reporting, because each client, each facilities, or each client should be unique on our contract, and also a client dashboard. It might be on B2B perspective, like the dashboard for the sustainability manager of the facilities and so on, or on B2B2C perspective, which means to give to our industrial clients, some tools and so on to change the behavior of the occupant, and to make more awareness on their facilities. The third layers is the deep analysis. On deep analysis is to providing ad hoc analysis catalog to put the monitoring and the optimization of the asset on industrialized way, statistical analysis, and also data quality. Data quality is very important, because without that, we cannot trust what we are showing and what we are doing. We cannot, if you have, for example, KPIs, which is green, but it's green based on 30% of the data, we cannot trust this KPI. We don't have enough data to say it's green. And on the top of that, the fourth layer is the decision making. By using features like data mining, machine learning, artificial intelligence, we can also build some solution on predictive models, demand side response, because when we are tackling both production side as well as distribution side, the systems becomes more and more complex. So we need some powerful algorithms and so on. The last but not least features is what we call the condition-based maintenance, where the purpose is to bring a dual value for the client. The first one is to perform the O&M and so on, not only based on the PPM itself and with the regular schedule, but we will interfere, we will go to the field, we will acting on the O&M area when it needs. And on the top of this optimization of the O&M, it also has a second effect based on energy efficiency.
It's like you said, it's all about the data, the confidence level in the data and how you process it to take it all the way to the level of the executive board and enable them to make decisions in a simple manner. I'm curious, Enova, you develop solutions software in-house or you use off the shelf? What's your recommendation?
It's both, because our position is very interesting, is very challenging, because we are making watching market. We are assessing the most suitable solution for our industry, but we are acting as an integrator and we are holding the whole liability. So it's not the startup, it's not the network supplier, it's not the IoT provider that are holding the responsibility and the commitment when it comes to the savings. So that means that we have to be very strong when it comes to the establishment of the right protocol to assess the market product. If we don't find in the market the product that might fit what we want to provide to the client, we can also develop it in-house. So in our landscape, we have the mix. Because we are not. We don't have only one single solution that we are using for everything. So we have a kind of a box based on the value creation, and on top of that, we are providing our services.
So you have an integrator perspective, you have a box of tools and you use what's the right tool and you can integrate around it if need be in-house.
Absolutely. And what I said earlier is really the matter, or I would say the urbanization things is very, very important because this is what will sustain your systems, bring trust, and also the purpose is not to have additional load to fix the issue and so on, but to save time of our analysts and so on. Yeah.
With the least cost possible.
Absolutely.
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah. I want to remind our audience that to submit their questions, I think we've addressed the points that were mentioned, and I also want to remind everyone that right after this panel, Alif from CEBC and Rida from Energetics will be presenting the updated energy efficiency report, looking at not just GCC, but this time actually we expanded and looked at other countries such as Jordan, Egypt, and Morocco in terms of the price signal and what's happening with the tariffs in the different sectors. We have a couple of more minutes. John, I want to come back to you about something that we discussed briefly. There is always a debate. Renewables, solar is dominant in the region, obviously. I mean, the sun is shining even in Ireland. They can see the world. And energy efficiency. Do they enable each other or do they fight against each other? How do you see energy efficiency supporting a bigger deployment of renewables? And maybe tell us a little bit about the role of flexibility. I mean, renewable is flexible generation. I think you called it asynchronous, non-synchronous generation per se, and demand side management also adds some flexibility, and that too can marry. Maybe tell us a little bit more about this topic, please. We have another 2 minutes.
Okay, a quick blurb, I suppose. No, look, absolutely. I think as we discussed, I would see that the overall end goal of energy efficiency is to minimize carbon impact and reduce waste. And I see that the synergies there are from taking a highly efficient energy source, typically, such as potentially wind or solar with a low running fuel cost, and then combining that with the flexibility to turn up and turn down or to shift your load profile depending on what way the grid is. I think that's really the key from an overarching strategy. So as I mentioned earlier, ESB are a utility, and as such we take a utility approach to dealing with things. And to enable increasing renewable, we need to start unlocking some flexibility. We need to change at a low level behavior about when things are switched on, when things are switched off, but also utilizing some technology solutions. As Sheila mentioned, utilizing the analytics to see, where are the pinch points in the grid? What can we do to shift load to alleviate that? How can we help the system? How can we make the system more robust? And when the system's more robust, we can enable increasing renewables. There's a system services market that's emerged in Ireland over the recent years, which provides financial incentive to be able to support the grid during periods when renewables are high, because that is when the frequency is most unstable on the grid. And this is very exciting, obviously. And while that can be at a level of capital investment in things like storage, which are very versatile, but also still quite new and still relatively cost intensive. Or it can be demand response, which is again, high volumes of data, a lot of analytics to marry those two together. And if you think about how those can be used in conjunction with a larger utility, then they're actually quite a powerful tool. Because demand response, not only does it alleviate the overall base load, it also does help to reduce the cost of increasing the cost of infrastructure because they all have a capital cost associated with that, and to enable more renewables to come on. And then just from an industrial or commercial side, battery storage is a technology that's kind of coming in, and we've seen it come very much in vogue in recent years. And it's still possibly not at a price point that's suitable for where electricity is cheap. Now, we've seen removal of subsidies and things like that, and that's been a very good enabler of energy efficiency overall, I would say. But I think if you're going to start going up to the next level, which is investing in capital assets and unlocking flexibility, then you need to do more than just it's about more than just what the kilowatt hour price is. It's more about the added value of service. What is the carbon impact of what I'm doing? What are the grid services that I can provide back to stabilize the grid? How can I incentivize this? And how can I take what I would like to say a utility approach to the overall message of energy efficiency? And that's kind of where I see it going in the future. More synergies. So
True. I mean, it's not about the kilowatt hour. It's also about managing the kilowatt hour. I mean, unfortunately, we ran out of time. I have a few other points. This is very interesting. I mean, there are topics. I mean, Stefan, I hope you're working on a tender for a negative load. It would be nice to see tenders in the region for give it to the private sector to reduce the load by so much. And with a load profile, that would open up storage, renewables, solar, demand-side management, all of it together. It's all tied to each other, as we all know. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Faisal Rashid, Dubai Supreme Energy Council, John Rafferty, ESP, Stefan De Gentile, Adis, Rashid Hamida, Innova. I would like to thank you for your time. This was very informative, and thank the audience for attending. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wright.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.